How's it going, everybody? This is DeanoGTO, and today we're looking at T-54 lightweight, the Tier 9 Russian light tank that leads to the T-100 LT, and that's pretty much what most people know this thing as, the tank that leads to the T-100 LT. Now, the opinion on this thing is pretty much set in stone at this point. It's pretty much considered to be a mediocre vehicle at best, as just basically a bad T-54, and that makes sense, because it is a light tank, and the general trait of light tanks in the game at the moment is pretty much they're worse medium tanks than the tanks of their tier. And honestly, a lot of the time they're more comparable to the lower tier medium tanks than they are to equal tiered medium tanks, even though like the lower tier medium tanks are, well, in some cases they look a little bit better than the higher tiered light tanks, which is kind of bizarre in my opinion, because, well, you would expect a higher tiered light tank to be able to outperform a lower tiered medium, but in some cases, kind of like this one, I feel like T-44 has a good shout at beating this thing in a one-on-one. And I feel like it could probably beat this thing in a one-on-one probably 4 out of 10 times, because they have the same health, and the T-44 has a far better overall gun. I'm not sure about the overall rates of fire. I feel like this thing probably has a slightly better rate of fire, but the inaccuracy of this thing's gun in comparison to the T-44 is just insane. Like, it's honestly night and day when it comes to like the way these guns handle. Because coming off the T-44 grind, pretty much, this tank feels like a downgrade in comparison to the T-44. Because honestly, the T-44 is a vehicle I love a lot. It's actually, in my opinion, probably the best tier 8 medium tank in the game, unless there's a premium tank, which I'm not aware of. But as far as normal medium tanks in the game go, it's probably the best one. I can't think of one that really rivals it. Like, in the previous iterations of the T-44 prior to the engine buff, I would say the Pershing rivaled it, but after this most recent buff to that vehicle, T-44, in my opinion, is the king of the hill when it comes to tier 8 mediums. So here I was just pretty much testing out one of the new like additions to this map, which pretty much you can cross it in almost any area you want. However, I should point out that areas like that sheer cliff, pretty much, yeah, you're not going to be able to cross there. However, areas more like that, you are going to be able to cross pretty consistently, and this middle island here is pretty much easily accessible. And the river, from what I've seen, is nowhere near as deep as it used to be. Like, I went clean across the middle of that river where the island is a couple games ago in the Batchat 25T FE. I died horrifically as soon as I got across because I wasn't paying attention to what tanks were going to be sitting on the ridgeline opposite, and that kind of cost me, but you can do it pretty easily if your tank has some half decent mobility. So heading down the middle of the map here, pretty much because I spotted a slight opportunity when it came to like the way the enemy team had laid themselves out, because it looked like most of their tanks had been committed to the west flank. Now this Panther, I was actually kind of amazed that he was quick enough to actually get shot off into me there. I was 100% expecting to just cruise past that guy, but nope, he completely caught me out there. And that Leo PTA, not even paying attention. I don't even think he realized I was here. So, go ahead down across here and head to the water towards where the enemy artillery is located. I just kind of guessed where the artillery would be pretty much. I was actually pretty much looking to get behind the enemy tanks and shoot shots in their asses while they weren't able to shoot back at me, so I could go like hull down potentially. But yeah, that didn't really work, so I just pretty much came over to this SU-14-1 and killed him pretty much. So at this point I actually noticed the map, a T-44 is heading towards me. Now, this T-44, if he had been using the LB1 gun, and if he hadn't taken that 490 hit before he got to me, I think he could have won this fight if he had played it correctly, but he kind of lets me just use his artillery as cover, and doesn't really push very hard toward me. Like, he tries here, but he kind of feels it because he's using that horrendous 122. Like, some people think that 122 is a viable alternative to the top 100 mil. In my opinion, that top 100 mil blows that 122 out of the water. That 122 is about as consistent as this gun. That's probably the best way of putting it. Like, this gun works at point blank range. That gun works at point blank range, but any other range, it's pretty much RNG whether or not you actually hit the target or not. So, I'm going to start heading over towards Leo PTA because this game is going to wrap up soon. Now, I have recorded this like 3 or 4 times now, so I can't remember if I mentioned this at the start or not. Tier 9 light tanks pretty much lower your expectations as much as you possibly can if you're going to be going through them. Because you really should not be expecting to have the same impact in a tier 9 light tank as you would in, say, like a tier 9 medium. Like, as an example, if you're comparing this thing to a T-54 or an Object 432, or an Object 430 for that matter, you're going to be able to do a lot more in those tanks than you would in this tank. Like, this tank just not even comparable. And I love how this Lego PTA, I think initially he was considering like pointing his gun towards me, trying to do some damage, but he realizes very quickly that, yeah, because of the big fat ass on the tank, there's no way he could point his gun down towards me. So, I'm going to head over towards this guy here because he managed to kill the SP-1C, or no, the LTDB. Actually, wait, they must have rammed each other to death, huh? I didn't even notice that. But yeah, the Leo PTA has managed to get behind the ridge. Going to head over towards him because I'm the fastest tank. Now, this is one of the situations where this thing is technically better than the tier 9 medium, but this is a rare scenario where it is actually useful to have this thing's speed. Most of the time, on the way that the maps are designed in this game, the speed just really isn't that useful. You can get the shot off first in a lot of locations, but you have to fall back immediately because this tank just, like, even though initially when this game was first put into the game, it was sold as the light tank with armor, that really doesn't say much. The armor's pretty worthless on this tank, if I'm 100% honest with you. It just doesn't do much, and there's not really much purpose to it except like extra weight for the tank that you can use for ramming. Now that is one thing I have been trying to take advantage of where I can, but ramming in this game is not as relevant as it used to be, because a lot of the maps we're used to see, like the monsters rams, just aren't really in the game anymore. Like maps like, I think it was, is that South Coast or I think it's South Coast it was called. Maps like that used to be like, it was primary maps for trying to ram stuff, but like, a lot of those maps are no longer even in the game. So yeah, ramming is a potential option in this vehicle, but that's pretty much it. Like, it's just not a great vehicle, and honestly it's more comparable to a tier 8 medium than a tier 9 medium. So yeah, let's go on to the post-game stats, and I'll talk about this a little bit more after I've finished going through them. So now we're looking at the post-game stats. So this is not a spectacular game, it's an okay game, and honestly I would set this as pretty much like the average to above average sort of game you can expect in a vehicle like this here in terms of like common gameplay of this sort of tank. It's really not going to consistently get like the 1200 to 1300 base XP games like you kind of can do in T-54 things and stuff like that. Like light tanks at tier 9 just can't do that in the same way that the mediums can. Now, in terms of like the base XP, I got 1032 base XP. This is probably in the upper third of the games I've had in this tank, and it's weird to say that because I feel like in a tier 9 medium, in comparison, like as an example, is M46 Patton, this would pretty much be an average game for a tank like that, and that's not me like that's like that's a bizarre thing to say because M46 Patton is the exact same tier as this thing, and the only reason I got more XP than this guy is pretty much because I got 2 extra kills. That's literally the only reason why I got more XP than this guy, because as we're going to see here, I only got 270 assistance damage. I blocked 1 shot, and that was an IS at the very start of the game. So yeah, this machine, it's very underwhelming, and it really doesn't have many advantages over just equivalent tier 9s. Like, it has massive advantages over heavies, I will give it that. It can outflank them with ease, but medium tanks can outflank heavies at tier 9 with ease as well. And this thing here is also the size of a T-54, so it's a really easy target for a light tank. Like, this is like the way I always try to like put this here. So T-54 is small for a medium. T-54 lightweight is definitely big for a light tank. Because compare this thing to a 1390, compare this thing to, say, a WZ-132F, which is a lot more, it's a lot more narrow, and I don't think it's quite as long as this thing here as well. It doesn't compare well to the other tier 9s when it comes to size, but in terms of the rest of the stats, I think this thing excels in comparison to the other tier 9 light tanks. Now, as I mentioned, the T-44, in comparison to this thing, comes out a lot better than you would really want. So probably the main reason why I dislike this machine, like in the way it currently is in the game, is the accuracy. Now the accuracy on these tanks, on the light tanks in general, is so bad that I honestly don't really understand why it needs to be quite as bad as it is. Like, bad accuracy, as an example, works on something like an Object 430U, because you're going to be at point blank range anyway. Meanwhile, something like this thing here, you kind of want to be at longer range if you can be at longer range, because you don't want to be the main focus of attention, and light tanks are always the main focus of attention whenever they're spotted. So, comparing this thing to the T-44, there's literally only a 90 difference between the DPM of this thing and the T-44 in favor of this thing. Now, granted, this thing does have a higher, like, standard round penetration, but the armor on the T-44, I would argue, is better. Like, this thing does have the frying pan shaped turret, but the T-44's turret armor is 10 better. The T-44 has better aiming time, or actually, wait, hang on. Yeah, it has better aiming time, it has better accuracy, it has better, I think it has better ammo, a better ammo capacity. It just has so many advantages that this thing doesn't have. It's a heavier vehicle as well, from what I can remember as well. So it's able to like ram stuff better than this thing. It has better front armor than this thing. It has better side armor than this thing. It has better gun depression, crucially, than this thing. Like, in a lot of fights, I really do feel like the T-44 in a one-on-one duel with this tank, I feel like the T-44 will come out on top more often than not if it's using the 100mm. Like, the only reason I won in this circumstance was because pretty much the guy was using the 122. Like, the 122, people think it's a lot better gun than it actually is. It's honestly pretty shitty, if I'm honest. After using the 122 versus the 100mm, it took me forever to get a really good game with the 122 in that tank. Oh well, I said really good, it wasn't even that good. Meanwhile, the 100mm, I kept having good game after good game after good game in that tank. Like, it was just like that 100mm is amazing. Meanwhile, this one here is mediocre at best, and just crap at worst. Like, it's the RNG required to play these vehicles is just insane to me. So yeah, let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. And for those who are curious, my ranking of the tier 9 light tanks is pretty much T49 number 1, 1319 number 2, this thing here number 3, 132A number 4, and the German, what the hell is it called, the Spy Panzer number 5, because pretty much the German light tanks are crap. Just in general, they're all massive and they're glass cannons, 100%. And the reason the 132A is worse is because pretty much that tank is just a worse version of this thing for the most part. It really doesn't have too many advantages. Sure, it's a little bit slimmer, but it has a worse top speed, and the gun feels about as random as this thing, but has a worse rate of fire. I don't know. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below about the tier 9 light tanks, and thanks for watching. I will see you in the next one.